The Exocet was still a major problem for the British. Margaret Thatcher finally persuaded President Mitterrand of France not to supply the Argentines with any more Exocet missiles, despite the terms of the original contract. It was a sacrifice for the French. The going price for an air-launched Exocet was $450,000. The Argentines were willing to pay $1 million. The British Secret Service was given $50 million to purchase every Exocet on the international arms market. Those that could not be bought were sabotaged. But the Argentines were not about to give up. By early May 1982, the British task force had gained air supremacy over the Falkland Islands. But the winter was fast approaching, and the decision of where and when to make the amphibious landings had to be made quickly. With its expertise in amphibious warfare, the Special Boat Squadron surveyed numerous beaches and possible landing sites. This is a view of one of the landing sites at Port San Carlos that was finally selected. Working mainly at night, SBS teams approached by boat and underwater. They used specialized equipment such as this beach profile recorder to determine whether a particular beach was suitable for landing craft and support vehicles. Although armed, the SBS preferred to operate by their motto, not by strength, by guile. With the help of the SBS's intelligence, the decision was made for the amphibious landings to be on the western edge of East Falkland at San Carlos Water. But G Squadron SAS identified a serious potential threat to the proposed landing site. At Pebble Island on West Falkland, there was an airstrip where the Argentines had based 6 Pucara ground attack aircraft. Armed with rockets and napalm canisters, they could cause untold casualties among the closely packed troops on the landing beaches. First, the SAS had to eliminate this threat in an all-out raid. On the night of May 11th, a reconnaissance team made a covert insertion by canoe. After hiding their craft, the team observed the Pebble Island airstrip for several days. The commander of D Squadron SAS, Major Cedric Delvis, takes up the story.
It's a question then of moving forward, what would you call the close reconnaissance. Only 2 men went forward. The intention was to confirm we had a target. One had to get fairly close. At this stage, we wanted detailed information. After all, we're bringing in a squadron to attack. The patrol was able to look onto the airstrip and see, in fact, there were 11 aircraft up there, which were very well dispersed around the airstrip. As soon as possible after dark, they did move back and put together a message to be transmitted back to the squadron on Hermes. The squadron inserted an additional 40 men towards the islands through a very dark and stormy night. It would be wrong to say that tension was rising in any particularly dramatic way, but we were anxious to get off the helicopters. As soon as we were on land, sooner really we would become masters of our own destiny. We had chosen the drop-off point some way back from the target. In fact, it was about 5 miles, to be quite certain that the enemy would not hear our approach. But nevertheless, we wanted to get those helicopters very quickly, so deplane as quickly as possible, and the helicopter lifted off. The commanders came forward to the patrol and received the updated plan.
Okay, if you can close in now, because this position is defended. Okay, it's going to have to be a very quick briefing because we're about an hour late now.
Personally, I've been clock watching ever since I left Hermes, and I knew I was beginning to run out of time. The whole process couldn't have taken more than a quarter of an hour from drop off to confirm brief to move on, but it seemed like an age.
Right position here, and then we'll split up.
All in all, people were carrying a lot of equipment that night. I would say the average load would have been a burden of about 40 or 50 pounds, and belt equipment, say 20 or 30 pounds. So we reached the final RV, the launch point, at 7:30, which was also not only a final checkpoint for the return of the troops, but also was going to be the mortar position. Troops, as they reached the point, dropped off the mortar bombs they were carrying, with the mortar team who established themselves. And I felt, well, since we're here, we might as well let the troops go forward and do what damage they could for 15 minutes. As it turned out, actually, I had great difficulty in getting them back, and didn't get them back for 45 minutes.
The attack on the airstrip itself was conducted on the night of May 14th by mountain troop under the command of Captain Gavin Hamilton. The raid was a complete success, and all 6 Pukharas, as well as 5 other aircraft on the airstrip, were destroyed. The SAS suffered only 2 minor casualties, and all the raiders returned safely to the aircraft carrier HMS Hermes. The British landings could now go ahead with a much reduced threat of air attack. But for the SAS, tragedy lay ahead. The SAS raid on Pebble Island had been a success. By May 15th, the British task force could make its final preparations for landing on the Falkland Islands. But on May 19th, during a simple administrative flight, a Sea King helicopter carrying troops of D and G squadrons of the SAS was struck by a large bird. The helicopter plunged into the sea, and 20 members of the regiment perished. It was the greatest loss of life suffered by the SAS since World War II. Despite the tragedy, the British landed in San Carlos water on the morning of May 21st. Within hours, the British were safely ashore without any opposition. But then the Argentine Air Force struck back with great courage and determination. It was a critical phase of the war, and several British warships were sunk. On the Argentine National Day of May 25th, the Exocet claimed its most important victim so far, the massive container ship Atlantic Conveyor. Thousands of tons of irreplaceable military stores were lost. But the Atlantic Conveyor also carried helicopters vital to the airlift of troops across East Falkland and their advance on the capital, Stanley. Now the British troops, would have to march across the width of the island, 50 miles, carrying their equipment. With the onset of winter and the weather deteriorating rapidly, it was a daunting task even for the fittest of soldiers. But first, the paratroopers had to eliminate the Argentine garrison at Goose Green. As the troops advanced, Pucarás attacked them. Suddenly, an SAS trooper stood up from his position, hidden in the scrub brush, and fired a Stinger